There hadn't been a national political nomination convention like it before, and there hasn't been one since. The 1968 Democratic Convention came at a time when the nation was divided. Opinions on the Vietnam War split the country. In effect, we were covering two major stories simultaneously: the nomination of the Democratic candidate for president in the convention hall, and, as it turned out, the demonstrations of thousands of young Vietnam War protesters camped out on the Chicago waterfront. The first few nights of the convention went along almost routinely. It was apparent that Senator Hubert Humphrey would win the nomination over his closest rival, Eugene McCarthy. The only other bit of real excitement up until then happened right in our own studio with those verbal swordsmen, Buckley and Vidal.
And to our two guest commentators, William Buckley and Gore Vidal, and to ask them what observations they've made about the security that we have seen all week at this convention and the events tonight on the streets beyond this convention hall.
Tensions were building on the convention floor between the Hawks and the Doves on the Vietnam issue. Then, to prove an old adage that actions speak louder than words, Buckley and Vidal almost got into a fistfight live on air.
People in the United States happen to believe that the United States policy is wrong in Vietnam, and the Viet Cong are correct in wanting to organize their country in their own way politically. This happens to be pretty much the opinion of Western Europe and many other parts of the world. If it is a novelty in Chicago, that is too bad. But I assume that the point of the American democracy is you can express any point of view you want. Shut up a minute.
No, I won't.
Maybe it was the tensions of the day. Maybe it was just their inherent personal dislike of each other. But their debates got so heated that in one, Vidal called Buckley a crypto-Nazi, and Buckley responded by calling Vidal a queer.
As far as I'm concerned, the only sort of pro-crypto-Nazi I can think of is yourself. Failing that, I would only say that we can't have
now listen, you
the right of assembly.
Stop calling me a crypto-Nazi.
Let's stop calling names.
You in your goddamn face, and you'll stay plastered.
Brilliant in this moment of crisis, all I could think to say to moderator Howard K. Smith into his earpiece was, "Do something, Howard." Howard said,
"Gentlemen, let's
go."
Buckley sank down in his chair. Then Howard deftly asked each one of them a question about a different topic.
Wasn't it a provocative act to pull down an American flag and put up a Viet Cong flag, even if you disagree with what the United States is doing?"
Both were still furious, but managed at least to finish the discussion with no punches thrown.
I think we've run out of time, and I thank you very much for the discussion. There was a little more heat and a little less light than usual, but it was still very worth hearing.
No sooner had the segment ended when two ABC corporate lawyers rushed into the control room to get the videotape and seal it in a vault. It was before the days when TV viewers had videotape recorders, so there were very few copies of this incredible exchange of ideas. It was almost 10 years later until I had a chance to see the tape. Obviously, the exchange got a lot of attention in the press, and I was contacted several times to discuss it. But under strict orders from ABC's lawyers, I had to give those words that we newsmen dread: no comment. This incident preceded the real drama that was to make this political convention one of the most exciting and the most unfortunate in the history of U.S. political conventions. By the third day of the convention, the war protesters in nearby Grant Park were beginning to get more vociferous. They had camped out for a few days and were getting more agitated and active. They wanted a get-out-of-Vietnam platform, but it was not to be with headstrong President Lyndon Johnson staying his course. Vice President Hubert Humphrey won the nomination. On the same night that he was to be nominated, all hell broke loose in Grant Park. We dropped our unconventional format and went live with the action all night. It was hard to say who was really at fault for the riot that was about to begin. The hippies, as the police referred to them, had been camped out in the park sleeping in tents and generally were a pretty grungy lot. But they had their cause, and everyone in America is guaranteed a constitutional right to gather and protest. Their cause was to put an end to the war in Vietnam. The police's job was to keep the demonstrations orderly. Mayor Daley and the police partly blamed the television for inflaming the problem just by being there. We felt Americans had the right to know. On the night of the balloting, the protesters went wild, shouting curses at the police and throwing rocks. Then, a frustrated and angry Mayor Daley gave the order for the police to clear the demonstrators out of Grant Park. That's when things got really rough. Our live cameras caught pictures of the police clubbing demonstrators, rioters throwing human feces at police, people choking from the acrid smoke of tear gas, all being seen live in the living rooms of America. All three networks' convention coverage was unconventional that night. As the last of the demonstrators were driven out of the park, Humphrey won the balloting for the nomination. At about 2 a.m. in the morning, I went back to my hotel just across Michigan Boulevard from Grant Park. The sting of the lingering tear gas hit my nostrils. My eyes teared, just as they had done in Montgomery, Alabama. All three news departments won the prestigious George Polk Award for Distinguished Television Reporting in Chicago during August 1968.